Well, this is a video coming up. This is all one video, but this is the excerpts coming up is completely unedited. I was going to edit it out, and I have mistakes in there. I make some mistakes, but I'm just going to leave it the way it is, and you can point out the mistakes to me if you want to, but here it is. Well, I don't like long videos, and you probably don't either. So I'm just going to get to the point about some history, especially about what we call Christianity today. Because if you look at your history books, going back to the 4th century, 325 AD, Constantine tried what the Syrians did back in 165 BC. The Syrians wanted to consolidate their rule, so they had their people go into the Hebrew temples and set up sacrifices where they were going to get the priests to sacrifice pigs and basically take over their worship and how they do things. Well, a lot of them had been Hellenized, and they were willing to, I think that's the word for it, they were willing to go along with that, some of the priests. Well, the Maccabees weren't having any of it. The Maccabees, the other Hebrews there at the time. And I think is it Matthias? It was the father of Maccabees. He stopped it. I think he killed one or two of the priests and killed the guy that was putting them up to it. And then they were being chased by the Syrians, and they were chased for a couple of years, and they had to fight them off. And somewhere along in there, the father got killed, and then Judah Maccabee became the leader of that. And that's where you get the book, The Maccabees. It tells about the history of all this. And that's where you get Hanukkah from. After they were able to defeat them and get back into their temples and worship the way they wanted to, they had enough oil, they thought, for just one day, and it ended up lasting 8 days. So they looked at that as a sign from Yahuwah, and they made a menorah. I guess it's a menorah. It's another candelabra that has, it has 9 different candles you can put on it. One in the middle is to light all the other 8, because it goes 8 days. That's why Hanukkah goes 8 days. So you can look all that up. But the thing is, people that embrace Christianity today, it was started in 325 AD by Constantine because he wanted to consolidate his power. Now, supposedly he converted to the way. And at that time, a lot of those folks were being burned at the stake, and they had to worship either the pagan gods, or if they were of the Hebrew religion, they didn't have to. But then again, a lot of the Hebrews were snitching on them if they followed the way, because then they wasn't doing the Hebrew sacrifices anymore. So they would snitch on them to the Romans and say, hey, they're not part of us anymore, so they should be worshiping your pagan gods. Well, Constantine stopped all that, and I'm sure it was welcomed, because Constantine was supposed to be a new convert. Now I ask you, a new convert comes in and starts his own church, and he brings in the pagans. And he decides, well, the pagans are celebrating, the winter solstice. We'll Christianize that. And I'm not sure if it happened exactly real quick at that time, but it became a part of it where they decided, oh, we'll Christianize this and call it, Christmas, the birthday of Christ. And again, even the term Christianity or Christians, I think it was a derogatory term. I think it was the Jews looking at them, oh, they're a bunch of Christians, or the pagans looking over there, oh, they're a bunch of Christians. They're following that Christ guy, And it's kind of like the derogatory terms you've heard in the South and everything else over the years. People don't embrace them. They're just called that. It says in Acts that they were first called Christians in Antioch. Okay, well, that's not a big thing, I guess, if you want to be called a Christian. But there was no need for a new religion, in my view. Was there? Did it ever say anywhere in the scripture that there should be a new religion? No, it was a sect of the Hebrew religion, just like the Pharisees and the Sadducees, right? Think about it. The Pharisees believed that that there was a resurrection. The Sadducees didn't. They probably had a lot more that they were different on, but that was a lot of the things for the different sects. Sects, S-E-C-T-S, and basically the way was a fulfillment of the prophecies of that Hebrew religion. Yahusha, HaMashiach, came and fulfilled prophecy, went to the cross, died, and was resurrected. That's all there is to it. There was no need for a whole brand new religion. Only thing we got out of that is it splintered off into the Protestant movement, but they married all these pagan practices in with what they were doing, right? Think about it. Now you got Christmas and you got Easter. They're all pagan practices, and a lot of these 501c3 churches buy into that. It's a business. And I'm not knocking a lot of people that are involved in it because they don't know any better. I didn't know any better for near 60 years. And I started looking at some of I don't know what triggered it. I think it was some pushback I got in church about asking questions or something, and I started digging deeper after that. Because I'd ask questions and people are like, oh, you don't have to worry about that. That changed. That's Old Testament, And especially if I brought up Deuteronomy 12, 29 through 32, that tells that Yahuwah tells his people, that he doesn't want to be worshiped that way. He don't want to be worshiped like the people worship their other gods. He's Yahuwah. He wants to be worshiped the way he wants to be worshiped. He don't want you to adapt any worship traditions or rituals or anything of that stuff. He said because they sacrificed their kids and everything else. He didn't want any part of that. But people ignore that, and I've heard people say, well, that's Old Testament. Well, if you'll read Hebrews 13:8, again, these are scriptures that were canonized by basically the Roman Catholic Church and changed through the years, and even the name of Yahuwah, it's hard because there's so many changes of the name of Yahuwah. Yahusha, Yahuwah is the Father, Yahusha is the Son, okay? Yah adds salvation, Yahusha, okay? Those names have been changed so many times, and I was reading the other day where the reason you have Jesus instead of Joshua, because it's closer to Joshua. Yahusha was his name, if he wanted to translate it, is closer to Joshua and not Jesus. It was changed by King James because it was confusing, he thought. There's just so many things that have been changed, and there's no need for it. There's no need to keep following that because it's a model, basically, that is a 501c3 business. We are to follow the way. We are to meet in ecclesias, not buildings. We don't have to meet in buildings. We can meet at somebody's house, I guess, which is a building. I mean, if you want to go and spend your money and rent a place, I suppose more power to you. If you want to get with a group of folks and rent a place and where you can meet, more power to you. I just don't believe that you have to pay somebody to come in and teach you. I don't believe the apostles were ever paid anything to come in. They were given gifts because they were doing it and they had to sustain, and they didn't have any money. They couldn't be working a lot of times because they were traveling by foot or camel or whatever. So you think about it. It's just a model that's going to be hard to break because people grew up that way. I grew up that way. So many people grew up that way. You have all these denominations. And I think that's one reason in Revelation, chapter 2 and 3, they talk about the 7 churches and 6 of them aren't up to par. I think it's because there's so many of them that, like you said, they lost their first love in one of them and all these other things. They're concentrating on making the money to keep paying the people to run it. And they want it to be ran every Sunday. Now we're getting into Sundays. That wasn't the day of work. That's not the 7th day. And if you believe the commandments, you know, it says, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Well, the Sabbath didn't change. It's our Saturday now. And there's like 7 or 8 denominations that follow that. But even them, even they have issues because they have their own book that they're following or whatever quirk it may be. Instead of everybody being consolidated and being one and following the way. See, he has one church. He didn't have the Catholic Church and the Baptist Church and the Methodist Church and the Church of Christ Church and Kojic and all these different ones and Seventh-day Adventists. And he doesn't have all that. He had the way. He is the way, the truth, and the life. And no one comes to the Father, Yahuwah, except through him. Anyway, it's hard to get all the names right. I know. I have researched the Sefer. I've bought a Strong's Concordance and all these other things. And you got to be careful about a lot of them because they too get their translations and their verses from things that may have, and a lot of times have, came through the stream that was created in the 4th century, 325 AD, by Constantine. I'm just saying that there's a different model that I think we need to adopt and get away from the worldly things and trying to be 501c3 businesses and forget that. Meet in ecclesias just like the apostles were doing. And like I say, if you have quite a few people and somebody has a barn out back, fine. If you want to donate and give him some money to help keep it going, I don't see anything wrong necessarily with that. But I believe that you would have a lot more money that some of the money that's being given weekly by folks or annually to pay the salaries of people that lead the singing and all this other stuff. I don't see that as necessary. That's just me. Think about it. I know a lot of those folks, and they're good folks. And that's the model they were brought up on. They went to seminary, went to school and all that to learn all these things. And I get it. And I know some of them may be offended by it. But I'm just saying, at some point, we have to come and face the truth that continuing on in this basic lie, saying this is the way and it's not, this was created by a Roman emperor to shut out the Hebrews too. They didn't want to mess with the Hebrews again. They knew their history. They didn't want to mess with them again. You understand? So that shut out a lot of the festivals, and they don't even talk about Passover. And these are things that Yahusha celebrated. He followed that. So when he comes back, when Yahusha comes back, are you going to walk up to him and say, "Hey, Jesus"? Really? That'd be like somebody, like your name is John. I'm walking up and say, "Hey, Bill." He'd probably look at me like, "Who are you talking to?" Now, I know he's more aware than that. And maybe he doesn't think anything about it. I don't know. It's just, I know there's verses that says there's only one name that you can be saved. How literal is that? Okay. What name do you know? What Jesus do you know? Do you know the Jesus of the Baptists or of the Methodists or the Presbyterians or the Jehovah's Witness or the Seventh-day Adventists? Which Jesus do you know? Really? Which one you know? I know there's only one, Yahushua HaMashiach, the Hebrew one. His identity is pretty cut and solid if you look at it in that view, in my opinion. So I don't know I'm going to change the world. I doubt if I am. I just something to think about. If you're getting up on Sundays and going to these churches to study and giving a bunch of money, like I said, I don't have anything against those folks, except the ones that know better, the ones that have been enlightened, but they're just going to continue on because they're making money off of it. I have a problem with those folks, but the people that are sincere, I know a lot of them that are sincere that are still, they're struggling. There's cognitive dissonance because they have been taught this their entire life, and they went into the ministry to preach the gospel, and a lot of them do. And they don't even make a lot of money. A lot of them in these small churches, some of the churches I grew up in, different things, there are real sincere folks. They will help you no matter what. They come to your funerals for your friends and family. They will visit you in the hospital. They are really sincere, good folks. And I don't have anything against them in that vein, except that I think the model that they preach from was created incorrectly and is wrong and shouldn't be continued. They should somehow figure out a way to migrate to the other model and not encourage some folks to want to get into the system and become part of the 501c3 business, is my opinion. They should encourage people to meet in their own ecclesias. And if people want to give to support somebody, an elder in the church or whatever it may be, then that's all for that group and not necessarily a corporate thing that goes across the United States and they invest millions of dollars in buildings and advertising and all this. It doesn't seem right to me. I struggle with it. I struggle even making this video. I don't know. I know a lot of people are going to not like it. People are going to say, oh, he's just mad because they wouldn't let him play in the church. And I've had people say that because they didn't, because I asked a lot of questions about lyrics, especially I've asked a few places that I used to go, and I started questioning lyrics. Next thing I know, we don't think it's your right for this season. Okay, well, that's fine. When you're singing lyrics that, from these Hillsong group or whatever, and different ones, and the one from Furtick, I can't think of his name. And some of these lyrics are just, man, you gotta check them out. I can't think of his name of his group or whatever, but they're making millions of dollars too. It's all part of the business. And a lot of the folks that I have found out that are in the business, they're in it for the business. They either couldn't make it some other genre of music or whatever. And there's some sincere folks in that too. I was sincere when I was in it. And it's really concerning, man. You have to have some discernment, and you have to really pray about it and ask for that discernment to try to figure out a way through it, because it's a narrow path, right? It's a very narrow path that we're to be on. So if you have any comments about this, please leave them. Tell me where I'm wrong if I am, or help me with getting some of my things that I'm saying. If I'm getting them wrong, let me know. There's a lot of information out there, and it's only because of the internet and the way things are getting out now. And you have to be very careful there. There's a lot of people even taking some of that and twisting it, trying to sensationalize some things. And you may think that's what I'm doing. But from the information that I have found that is out there, what I just told you is the history of what we now know as Christianity. And it's basically became a 501c3 business. Look around. There's a lot of people making a lot of money off of Jesus and Christianity. I heard someone call some big place I used to go Six Flags over Jesus because it's so huge. And people will argue, well, they're getting the gospel out. Okay, maybe they are. At what cost? Is it better to split it up into small ecclesias? Do you get more out of it that way? Or is it, I just don't get it. I mean, I get it. I understand that there's a lot of people making money off of it. A lot of TV shows that made off of it. And I'm sure people will be trying to quash this and come back on this because it could hurt their business, I guess. There's a lot of pastors I've followed in the past, and I believed in them. And Like I said, I didn't want this to go very long, but look all this up. It was started in the 4th century, 325 AD, the Christian movement, which I think is a derogatory term. It was originally, I believe, a derogatory term used by the non-converted Jews or Hebrews or Israelites. Like I said, I mean, you get into that, even Jews, my understanding, were from Judea, and they were from the tribe of Judah or Benjamin, or lived in that region if they were really Jews. Now, today we just call them Jews, right? A lot of people do. I prefer to call them Israelites if they know their lineage. And they were basically Hebrew. You know, Moses was a Hebrew because he lived before the Israelites. Didn't he or not? No? Okay. God, there's a lot of history. Man. Anyway, have a good one. Leave your comments below. I know Abraham was a Hebrew. Noah was a Hebrew, right? Weren't they Hebrews? There's Hebrews, Israelites. When you get into Israelites, you get into the Israelites. It'd be after Abraham, because Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So then you'd have your Israelites, which means, yeah. Too long for this video. Have a good one. Stay blessed. Stay looking for truth.